live.
Okay, I will call the meeting of the Fairport Industrial Development Agency, February 24th, 2020 meeting to order. We'll start with public comment and asking if there's anyone here for the public comment portion. Hearing no one and seeing no one, I will close the public comment period and ask for approval of the January 21st, 2020 meeting minutes.
So moved.
I will move to approve the minutes from the January meeting.
Oh, I have to look you. Sorry, second.
Any comments, corrections, or discussion to those minutes? We will take a roll call vote. Leslie?
Aye.
Donna?
Aye.
Ken? Aye. And I will abstain. Okay, moving to the financial reports. Resolution 2020-2, authorizing payment of the bills.
Having reviewed the one bill listed, I recommend payment of the bills. I move so.
I will second.
Any discussion or questions regarding that bill? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next we'll move on to our investment report, and we are being visited by Tompkins Wealth Advisors and our at least annual visit to just give us an update and a little discussion and be available to answer any questions we might have on our investment account.
Yes. So I had some more reports. Again, my name is Megan Burke, and I have brought my teammate, Jeff Blythe, to join us for today's meeting. Jeff has joined us in a dual role. He's our Chief Investment Officer, so he oversees all of the investment strategies and heads up our investment committee. And also in Western New York, he partners with us as our portfolio manager. So he's the one that I team up with on the investments. So I was grateful he could join today and come and meet all of you. So with that said, I'm going to pass around two different reports. One of the reports that we take a look at is the fixed income to maturity. It's just a nice breakdown in terms of how the funds are invested, the different buckets where they're going to be maturing. And then also an annual report on the full account that we'll go through. So I'll kind of pass those around so that you've got visuals. Thank you. And I think I bought too many, but better too many than not enough. So again, the fixed income to maturity is just all of the investments as they stand currently, and it just gives a visual for what's going to mature in under a year, the 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5, 5 to 7, and 7 to 10. And it just shows you in the under the market value column the dollar amounts that are going to be maturing. So it gives you some idea as to the time period. And this is what's been helpful with Martha in terms of meeting cash flow needs. So it's just a nice visual where it kind of summarizes everything. So any questions on that one? That one's pretty straightforward.
It's one of my favorites.
I know it just makes it so simple. The one I'm passing around now is more soup to nuts. Yeah, I think I brought too many copies.
Better too many.
Better too, exactly. So this is a 2019 report on the full account. In the upper left-hand column, you can see we started the year last January of 1.7 million, and then during the year had taken out 400,000. So it gives a net starting number of the 1.3 million. In the middle column, you can see interest, so actual interest that the investments generated of $36,520. Market fluctuation, the value of the treasuries was up 36,000. Advisory basis points, a rate of 0.5% for the full year, debited quarterly, totaled to $7,167. And then the total return net of any fees or expenses was the 4.65%. So Then if you can.
Usually we gripe about this, but 465 I'll certainly take.
Yeah, in terms of performance, that of course, you'll see on the first one that I gave you, the yield to maturity
Yeah.
shows the yield to maturity overall of 1.5%. So the yields aren't so great, but the value of the funds happen to be up as well, so.
Last year, we got some price appreciation. Because the interest rates came down, so the prices went up. We got the best of both worlds last year.
How'd we do today?
Depends on what you were in and how much you were in it. Market had ended up down over 1,000 points. And the 10-year treasury went down to 137. So what does that mean?
Scary.
It means wait till tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's today it's, how would I characterize today? I would characterize today as emotional and not fundamental. It's almost like, it's one of those times that we see more and more as the market keeps going up and people are making a lot of money, that their emotions are decidedly pessimistic. The more money they make, the more pessimistic they get.
Interesting.
Say, yeah.
Attest to that.
So it's, I always characterize and have for years, think about the stock market or the equity, any securities markets as thickness of ice. You know, how thick's the ice? You know, you're going to walk out on it. How far? What's the risk that you're going to fall through, or that somebody else is going to fall through when you're going to fall with them? And the ice has been thin in some spots, and it's almost like a foregone conclusion that something was going to break at some point. And who knew what the
Trigger would be.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, there's probably a 50-50 chance that tomorrow the market could rally 600 or 700 points, or it could go down again another. Or, I mean, the trigger was coronavirus. Now
Italy.
it's too soon. It's too soon to tell whether or not. I mean, if we're looking back at SARS and Ebola, things like that. I mean, typically we end up waiting for science and containment to solve the problem over a period of time. It's just too soon to, and if in fact that happens, the markets will correct. It's just too soon. It's just too soon. But were we ripe for a correction? Absolutely. Sure. There's a thing called gravity that brings things back.
I like your analogy you share with clients about the fear and greed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I mean, but this investment is basically risk free. So, you know, as individuals, we can, how much risk do we want to take? Well, this is not taking, well, you're mandated to a large extent, but this is risk free. This is just getting whatever the US government is going to pay on it.
So the next page is a less, this is a holdings. So the only differential between this and the one that we looked at is this one includes the cash. So, which isn't a very large number, but it does include the cash. So if you flip over then to page 5 of 7, it just lists out the two distributions that we did. So it's all pretty straightforward, clear cut. But the two reports combined do give a nice overall picture. So, and then usually what we do is anytime like the next maturities will be in May. So when those positions mature, I reach out to Martha and we just take a look at cash flow needs as they currently are versus inventory options on reinvesting for certain time periods.
I will say Megan's very responsive to everything that whenever I reach out. So.
Thank you. It's a good team.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Any questions? So in terms of, I guess, in terms of the cash flow needs on our end with the project or any of the expenses that you have in terms of cash flow, all I try to give Jeff a heads up on too is longer term picture, if we'll have to dip into this portfolio for any of it. So, so that part I ask as well.
Right.
And I shared this with them.
Yes, I think earlier in the year, I talked with Ken Rohr about, we had some funds in the cash account, but we pulled them out and invested them in CDs and local banks because there's just a little bit better return. And that's sort of the funds that we'll be using to primarily fund that bicentennial gateway project.
Okay.
That's our expectation right now, but
Mm-hmm.
And we have about $200,000 maturing in this in our fiscal year,
What is your fiscal year?
October.
Yeah, you've got in 5 months, actually, your 200,000 will be closed in the next 3 to 5 months. And typically, how far out have you rolled it in the past? Or is it always an at the ready kind of a decision?
So some of it is based on cash flow needs, timing,
Right.
and then some of it's based on what the treasuries are paying out over
Yes.
the different time periods
Okay.
and trying to balance as well as stay within the parameters for the IPS.
Yeah.
But a lot of it has to do with the time periods, aside from cash flow, is what we can get on the treasuries.
Okay.
So what are we looking, what are you proposing, if anything, on any kind of changes or just kind of staying the course and look for opportunities as they come up? Or?
So as it relates to the treasuries, as it relates to the actual investments, we just pull up the inventory based on the time periods and try to give an idea of what's available at that time. As it relates to the CDs, we have our sister company, the Bank of Castile, that we're always looking at the rates, which usually in the short term on the CDs, they've not been competitive
No, they
as
haven't.
Canandaigua. So there's been that.
How long was the maturity on the Canandaigua?
typically I've been going 90 days.
That's what the one I just signed for Lions was that as well.
90 days.
Mhm.
And what kind of rate?
Like this, that's
Point
not
nine.
updated, I apologize for that, but if we look at
0.9
oh, was that, okay.
for the application I just signed today.
Oh, okay, so I have, in March, I have 100,000 at 141. April, I have another 100,000 at 138, and in May, 135 for 250. The cash
Is that
balances you have is not updated,
Is
so.
that Canandaigua?
And those were all 90?
Essentially, yeah. But I can send you an updated spread of that.
The three of them combined total 250.
The three of them combined are 550.
Got it.
I have as Megan said, I'm relatively new to Tompkins, but I also bring a relationship with a CD broker from my previous existence in wealth management. So as we look forward to any opportunities, there is another distribution channel that I can open up that Tompkins has not yet enjoyed, which may open up to some other CDs
Some we'll look at, for sure.
that,
Sure.
that are all
Well,
FDIC insured national banks, but just a different distribution channel. I just have to make sure that it would fit, all of the pieces would fit to your IPS.
Right. I mean, our policy would have to be updated because we're very specific about it.
With
It
the
actually
banks.
calls out which banks we can
Yeah.
do that with, but definitely look to. Oh, no.
If I read I did read your policy before I came and maybe some clarity. There's one on deposits.
Mhm.
Now, does that include CDs or is that bank deposits as opposed to CDs? Some people slice and dice that as two different things.
I'm pretty sure it's just deposits.
That's a checking or savings account,
Mhm.
as opposed to the authorized banks and investment advisors, who are the people who can then manage your money, but maybe not presumably their own products or services, but as the advisor to go out and source. So if Tompkins is a registered or an authorized, what would you term it here, list of financial institutions that you can, agencies that can be as
It would fall
authorized,
under,
it would fall under this one. Then if we went and found other banks through our channels, but it went through us, that it's authorized.
I'll have to take another look at that. That's an interesting point. Still, in history, it's all been with the same lending institution.
Okay.
it's interesting too, 'cause I interpreted deposits as being CDs.
So do I,
But, so it's interesting.
but thank you, that's interesting that we should look at the policy.
Yep.
Maybe we can be more clear on it.
Yeah, because it's actually well, I hate to use the word product, but it is a security. It's not a, the banks might call them, or
Certificates of deposit.
yeah, they would clarify it, but it may be semantics and maybe it isn't. I'm just trying to enlarge the sandbox.
We'll take another look at it, certainly
Yeah.
worth.
And if it doesn't,
Trying
it
to
doesn't,
do
but if
something.
it does, the end result is, we're talking about the same thing, which are securities of deposit that are FDIC insured with registered banks. It's just enlarging the opportunity set. And by then also hopefully increasing your yield component,
And
because
then
it's out of the,
New York State Municipal, the OSC also prescribes what we can invest in as well. Don't we live by the comptrollers on municipal funds?
They speak to the provisions of the general municipal law,
Yes.
sections 10 and 11. That's what they audit.
But definitely it's something we should explore.
thought I'd bring it up just with a clarification or question.
Great.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Nope.
Thank you.
Great.
Well, happy New Year.
Yeah.
Enjoy the
Thank you. See you again, Megan, Jeff, nice to meet you.
Nice to see you.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks. Enjoy your evening.
Perfect.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Have a good one.
Good night. I'm just gonna try to move this without too much issue. Oh, that's better.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody have any comments on the Tompkins presentation?
Just, I want to take a closer look at the investment policy,
Mm-hmm.
refresh my memory.
And it can be modified if necessary, if it's to our advantage and stays within compliance.
Mhm.
Okay. Financial statements for cash and investments.
The pilot fee income was recognized in February for the cannery, so that's why you don't see it here on this. And these reports through the end of January. That was 76,000.
We're still carrying money on website. Can you just give us a little update where we might be with that?
We're on hold with that. We wanted to see what the villages looked like, to see if there was an opportunity to
The one
piggyback.
that was due in November?
Yes,
How's it look?
I don't know the latest on that, of when it's gonna be ready to go.
Oh, so they haven't done anything and we haven't seen it yet then.
No, it hasn't been gone live yet. That's right. So, I wanted to see what that looked like, to see if there was an economy of scale. But on the other hand, having our own is also a good idea too. And it's on, you can bring that to the forefront. Now that we've gotten a few of the projects behind us, we can try to get that ramped up again, because it is out of date.
Anybody have any comments on the financials? All right, we can go into old business. Bicentennial Canal Gateway Project update on bids with GPI Incorporated as our visitors, and I saw that they're here, so they can certainly join us.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Good to see you.
You looking tan?
It's great week.
John?
Everybody, how are you?
So, GPI is joining us on Wednesday, the 12th of February. Bids were open. Am I getting those dates right?
That's
The
right.
12th, and 3 bids were received for the Canal Gateway project. And so they have done some review of that. And so they're going to give us an update on where that stands. Now, just to remind our board, even though we are a funding partner of this project, we are not the contracting agency. That will be done through the Village of Fairport. They will be the ones that actually will be making awards. And at this point, the amount that we have approved as a board to contribute to that project remains the same regardless of where the bids are at this point. So Tom and John,
I'll start and then we'll go from there. Just to back up a little bit, as I think we had mentioned to you previously relative to the approvals and the reason we are schedule-wise where we are is partially with the DEC approvals on the project. We have been before DEC for 7 months.
Yep, we submitted it in May. They received approvals December 31 of 2019.
So, as John just said, we received those approvals on the end of December, and they're just a matter of fact that DEC's priority are the Lake Ontario flooding, and everything else is secondary associated with it. So with that, we had final approvals from DEC, and then we went out to bid on the January 18th. With some of the projects and knowing how busy it is out there, we solicited a number of contractors. We reached out to 14 prime contractors plus 2 additional subcontractors, supplier type contractors. We did a pre-bid walkthrough. We had 1 addendum based on the comments and questions that were received associated with it. And then we, as Kevin had mentioned, we had received the bids on the 12th with 3 bidders responding to the project. We can go back through and you can ask any questions. I'll just kind of lay this out here.
waiting in there. We'll be done in a few.
The 3 bids that we received are from Crane Hogan, Villager, and CP Ward is listed here, with the lowest bidder being Crane Hogan at $712,000, which was significantly over the original budget that we had put together. we had put together the budget that we had based on a unit price basis for the contract, identified all the materials and everything that was in the contract, went through, utilized New York State DOT bid results. We double checked them with the latest bid results that Town of Parrington had for a sewer job that they had, and a number of other factors and different projects that we had in-house and such. And our original estimate was $590,000 associated with the project, so we were significantly over that in anybody's estimation.
Over 20%.
Yes, 20.8% is noted here. And looking in that further and such, it's quite common in this day and age, unfortunately, with the number of bids that are out there, a number of projects that are out there, the ready projects, with this not being that harsh of a winter and everything that's going on there, us getting into the springtime, thus the schedule and such. And a lot of it has to do with the workforces that are out there. There's not enough people to do the work that's currently out there right now. So any of the projects that the contractors are going after, they're saying, we're going to make money on this, and thus, unfortunately, the prices that we have. Question?
How is it 100,000 less than the other two?
Hmm.
100 and 150,000.
They were the most active associated with the number of questions and such.
Hmm.
And also the coffer dams that they, because we were getting to the point where they may have to work in the wet conditions. They only bid $1 for the coffer dams, and that's retaining the water in case they had to put the piles in as the water level comes up into the canal, feeling that they can get that work done prior to the deadline and the canal coming up.
There were two contractors that took that approach, meaning that they felt there would be able to abide by the aggressive schedule of getting the work done before. So Crane Hogan and I believe the high bidder, CP Ward, did not put a number value to that coffer dam, with the understanding that they felt they could get the work done prior to the canal being filled.
And if they don't,
It's
are we in
just,
trouble?
it's a means and methods type of price that they gave us, so it's not anything structural, it's nothing permanent, it's nothing that gets built into the project, it's just means and methods on how they are approaching to build it. And if they chose to use coffer dams, it would be paid for doing that, but they're choosing not to, so the responsibility and liability is on them to still complete the work.
And I'd say that all three contractors that did bid on the job are reputable, sizable contractors in Rochester area. So they've been longstanding in the area and have very good reputations, all three of them.
When it says estimated quantities and unit cost, that included the labor, that included everything, right? Yeah, okay.
So the time frame associated with the filling of the canal was the critical date that we were trying to move everything, and then there was some pre-award discussions that went back and forth with us meeting with Brian White here and speaking to the village attorney and such, and what was discussed was that if we choose to award if the village chooses to award the project, they have to award it based on what the bid was submitted. As with every project, there could be differences in the units associated with the project, and some things could be increased in quantity, some could be decreased in quantity, which was ultimately built and paid for. But in our case, we have a couple areas that we could potentially cut back on after the award. And we identified some of those points, one being the stone pavers. I don't know if you want to talk about the reductions.
Sure. Yeah, so as Tom mentioned, we had a couple different conversations with both Brian and Martha on strategies, like what could we bring to the table, or what, as our knowledge of the project is advanced, what could be kind of eliminated or swapped out, and one of those items that was more of a decorative item, not a critical component to the project, was a Medina stone pavement, which was is proposed right at the corner of the Murphy building, and would be used as a decorative item, be used for kind of to evoke more of a historic Fairport, if you will. So we looked at that item, and we also looked at eliminating the portion of the kayak dock. And on page 3, we kind of break that down and what that means dollar-wise. So just to give an idea of if those were items that the village was looking to use to get to a more palatable overall budget, those would be 2 places to start. So we looked at what the ramifications were to that would be, and end up with a potential reduction of $90,000 to $98,000. Again, which we stated in the initial transmission, you know, that's our estimation, does not always equal what the contractor is willing to give back or agree upon, but it's certainly with a unit price based contract, the village, and we feel like we have a significant leg to stand on to begin that discussion, if that's the direction the village wish to take.
In both of those items, we've talked internally within the team. They still retain what we were submitting for with the grant application, and we're compliant associated with that. What we're looking at with the kayak dock is, if you recall, the plans, but we have a center section with the stairs, and then a portion to the right and a portion to the left, and possibly eliminating the portion to the west, which is the left.
So that would shorten it by 30 feet overall.
Correct.
Correct. So that would make neighbors happy.
Exactly.
That are the adjoining neighbors.
Exactly. Yeah. So the true dollar of that goes up the hill, if you will, from the water. So there's less excavation, less wall that you would need to retain the soil that you're excavating, less stone backfill, etc. So there's a number of different items. Not just
would still be cleared though, and have some sort of
we
treatment.
left that in there.
There was some discussion also about, early on in the project, we talked about some in-kind services with the village doing some of the paving and signage and so on and so forth. But as we progressed through the process, those were included in the contract and not completed by the village, other than the burial of the electrical lines and the removal of poles by the Fairport Municipal Commission. So, Brian's considered that, and right now he'd like to proceed with the award as shown, with the potential of these 2, the kayak dock being shortened and the pavers being eliminated, but still having a contractor do all of the construction, with the exception of the electric lines. So with that, we've noted here, and I skipped over a couple pieces that we can go back and talk about, but we noted the funding, as Kevin had mentioned earlier, where the dollars are coming from. The schedule, the March 12th date, was a condition put forth on the proposal or the bid as submitted by Crane Hogan, that they have to get moving as quickly as possible on this and feel that they can get, quote unquote, out of the water and do the work within the zone from the low water elevations to the high water elevations prior to the filling of the canal. And so that's critical. The board's looking at trying to award this on the 12th, but Brian has talked to the village attorney about potentially allowing them to pre-purchase or start the process associated with the early stages of the construction. If the permits are obtained and the insurances are in, they can start work prior to that, and the village would commit And, you know, that's what he's working on with.
So what does that mean? So that they would just, because the meeting on the 12th is a workshop meeting, that they would not,
He has authorization
Award.
past the 12th because the 12th is the bond anticipation note, the bonding timeframe that he needs to abide by. But he's gotten, I believe, it's the approval from the board to proceed with the testing and early steps in the process, allowing the contractor to do that. And to be honest with you, those are some discussions.
now I'm confused. So their meeting is, they have a
I
meeting
believe
on the
that
9th,
I
right?
believe the
March-
12th is the last day of the estoppel.
Yes.
But March the 9th is the village board meeting, right? A
Okay.
week before, we're the 16th, so they must be the 9th. Would that be
Mhm.
correct?
Mhm.
Or the Monday preceding?
Right.
I think the date is critical for the bonding, not the.
But I'm not sure why they wouldn't be able to make the contractor work. So in any event, I mean, there must be something new to it. So the idea would be give them a letter of intent
Yes.
and ask them to start. You know, I would caution that they may not be able to pull permits with a letter of intent without a contract. So that's just a caution. Maybe they can, but I wouldn't be surprised if they can.
And their bid is conditioned upon starting on the 12th, so that lines up with all the requirements associated with it. Anything prior to that is, you know, would only improve the situation.
And I'm guessing you've had conversations with Crane Hogan? You know,
Briefly, yeah.
because as Leslie pointed out, you know, they were $100,000 lower than the second bidder. And are they comfortable with the bid that they put together, and they can identify why they're
I'll-
cheaper and
yeah,
they're
I'll-
happy with getting a project?
I haven't heard otherwise. Let's say, I mean, I know they were aggressive, as we mentioned. Every question that we received was from Crane Hogan, with the exception of one. They knew the project, and just talking with their PM who put the bid together, it was as if they were in some of our meetings. In
They haven't
terms of,
sent you a notice if they want to withdraw their bid, so
they
that's a good
haven't,
sign.
and we've asked them for some of the pre-award materials, so they've submitted schedules, they've
Yeah,
submitted
we saw the letter.
MW utilization.
Yeah, let's back, just kind of off topic. Is there a MWBE requirement on this?
There's
Other
not a
than a good faith effort, or,
Yes, good faith effort. And
but
this
there
is-
are no percentages set.
No. And that was from the grant admin prior to the bid book being published.
That will be different on the north side associated with the parks funding versus the canal funding.
The discussion I did have with the VP at Crane Hogan, it sounds like they would be exceeding the 30% of the grant amount as is, so, which is good.
Okay. Questions, comments from the board?
What happens on the 12th? The estoppel period runs out.
What's an estoppel period?
People have the right to object to the issuance of the
Bond.
bond anticipation. Is that me? What the heck? I'm so sorry.
The notebook's talking to get one of those notebooks.
If they think there's something incorrect about the bond resolution itself. But I've never seen it. So then I wonder how quickly they would issue the notes so they can begin to pay bills. Okay.
And so going back to the 20% over, when that estimate was put together by you guys, was that anticipated at that time that we were going to do the work over the winter, that we were going to have approvals in hand
Yes.
earlier, and this would have been a a winter project.
Correct.
And now that has moved, and so that schedule now is that start in March and be done October. Is that a
We had September 1.
September 1 is the completion date?
And I was asking about the labor costs because wasn't there some law that was passed in New York State regarding labor rates on
This is,
public projects?
yeah, it's called prevailing wage rate, but this
Right.
has always been, I mean, it's been a law in New York State. If there is
Okay.
public funding involved, it has to be in a prevailing wage projects or the Davis-Bacon Act, but there wasn't any significant change. They have annual increases, but I don't think that there was any significant law changes that would have influenced the labor cost.
Yeah, a third of the spec book is probably prevailing wage requirements and such, identifying each category and such, so we went through that process.
And
Okay.
as Tom pointed out, these three contractors are all public works contractors. They're familiar with the process.
Sad state of affairs, we don't have a good enough labor force, huh? My gosh.
Everybody looks at the unemployment rates. And
Yeah.
And the kids coming out of school are not
Interested,
into
right?
the trades. That is the biggest part of the problem.
Exactly. It's not just the trades, it's the whole engineering field, also, all the way through the whole construction process.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks for coming in. Not the best news.
I know,
but
thoughts about the reductions?
I'm not disappointed in seeing the West 30 feet go.
I think I might be, but I'd want to go back and look at the designs again.
I think the pavers, everybody can see those go.
Yeah.
But that's not much money.
You have anything?
Thank you.
Thank you. See you guys.
Yes. Thank you.
And Tom, when you go out, would you peek your head in and tell Swiver?
Yep.
Yeah.
You going to 8 o'clock?
8 o'clock tonight. I am got to head it out early tomorrow morning. We need to pack. Okay, so is there any other old business?
No.
Okay, I guess we will move on to new business. And we are going to talk about the economic development study proposals that were received.
Right. As you recall, the village put out a joint RFP for comprehensive planning services and an economic development study. We received 3 proposals. The village and IDA received 3 proposals. The village has selected SWBR to do their comp plan. So we've got a couple of representatives from SWBR with us tonight to talk about their proposal for the economic development study as originally spec'd. I also had a pretty detailed follow-up interview with them, and they proposed some additional services, which I recommend.
Yeah,
Yes,
come on in.
So,
How are ya? Good to see you, Dad.
Hello, Don.
How are you?
All right.
Well,
Kevin.
Welcome.
Hello.
Attorney.
Nice to see you.
Ed Russell, attorney.
Donna.
Hi, John.
Hello, Glenn, nice to see you.
Hi, Bruce. This is Don. That's great.
and we're live streaming this evening.
Oh, are you?
Yes, we are. So,
Okay.
that's pretty forward.
We get involved.
Good to see you.
Oh, okay.
So I did share with
Don's
everyone.
sister, by the way, was one of the original, or no, not original, but a long ago IDA member.
Oh, wow.
I think I came on this board replacing Kara.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, everyone did get a copy of your original proposal. And I've also shared with them, shared with everyone the copy of the proposal for the additional services.
Great.
So if you want to just maybe walk through how you came up with what you've got for the proposal on the ED study and why we think that the additional services would be of value.
Yeah, and we have all had a copy of, all the, everything that you've submitted, so we've had a chance to review that. Yeah, just Martha said to walk us through, we appreciate that.
I can start by introducing our approach. Obviously, we submitted on both the comprehensive plan and on this economic development study, and SWBR is the lead. We're not taking the lead in the economic development study. We're really taking the lead on the comprehensive plan, but we're going to act as kind of project manager for both of them. I'm a planner and landscape architect, and we often consider ourselves a jack of all trades, master of none. So we know a little bit about a lot of things, and but not enough to bring in experts, to fill those holes. And so in this case, we brought in Highland Planning and Glenn's firm, Urban Advisors, to be the experts in the economic side of this. And they both bring unique perspectives. I think you heard this, that Highland Planning, who also does a lot of community outreach. I don't know if I would call it more traditional economic development analysis, but they're a little bit that way. Glenn's much more focused in this expertise in kind of incremental development and new urbanism and working in walkable mixed use, higher density environments. And I'll let you
Most of our work is
about
in
that.
main streets and sort of village revitalization projects, whether it's New York Village or a village in Memphis, Tennessee.
So for our proposal, that's kind of how it came about.
That's the question. Yeah, Highland Planning, but you also said Urban Advisors. What's
So I'm Urban Advisors. It's my company, my business partners on the West Coast, where we started the company in Portland, Oregon, and I moved back to the East Coast. So we do urban economics, and we focus. So most of the scope, I think about half of this scope is really mine. The balance of it is then between SWBR and Highland Planning. Highland Planning really specializes in doing the public outreach. Although Sue on their team is also very capable in economics, and we're going to share some of that work a little bit, especially in the reporting that they're going to be producing a lot of the documentation, I think. Where did I go off there?
Yeah, so I was just starting out by how we kind of assembled the team and what our different roles are. So again, we would be managing the project, be in the day-to-day contact and adding value where we can. The Highland Planning would be doing the majority of the legwork in terms of the analysis and the outreach, and then Glenn would be expertise on really development and redevelopment. And so that's the team. We have Fisher Associates on the team more for the comp plan than for this, but they also, if there's any questions about infrastructure or seeker, environmental, that sort of thing, then they're on our team as well. As far as our approach go, we really we responded to the request for proposals by saying yes. I think the scope of work that we put forward makes sense. And then we did sit down with Martha and we talked through it a little bit to see if we saw any holes or opportunities. One of the things we talked about and we presented was how important we believe it is to have kind of an iterative process between planning and economic analysis, and also how that needs to be driven by a strong vision. So we had this slide that kind of showed the vision driving this economic analysis and planning and design process that kind of works together, that eventually comes out with the recommendations. So
The idea on that is that if you try to really separate the economics either before or after the planning process doesn't get the real benefit of the economic information. Either it's been done too early without understanding where the plan is going, or it's been done too late and is just kind of checking a box saying, well, good luck with that. So I've really, our firm has specialized in kind of bridging that gap and making the economics fit into the planning process. So in this, where we understand that it's two different entities, there'll be a pull-out economic report that all the stuff that otherwise would have fallen into a appendix because it's not very interesting to the planners will become like major focuses in the report that we're providing for this scope.
So the visioning piece was something that wasn't strongly stated in your proposal. So we basically said, well, let's beef up that part, and it's not a lot, just maybe one extra meeting, because we'll do some visioning in one of the meetings that we already had planned. Maybe let's do another one and make sure that we have a strong visioning basis. So that wasn't an additional service that we were proposing. The other one I'll let Glenn talk to, which was more kind of a build-out analysis piece.
Let's stay with visioning for a minute. And we're in a unique situation because you have a village doing a true comprehensive plan, and you have an economic development agency doing an economic development study. Who is going to be responsible for the vision? If the comp plan says we want Mayberry and the economic plan says we want Walmart, how does that marry, and whose vision are we really going to be talking about?
That's a great
That's
question.
exactly how our conversation went.
Yeah.
Is our vision and mission the same as the village? Are we here to implement theirs, or do we have our own vision and mission? And so I think that's where some of this work would sort that out.
Yeah, and I'll start by saying I think you're going to have your own mission, but a vision. But I don't know if it's part of the study. So I think what we were really hoping to do is some visioning versus adopting a vision as part of this. Our understanding is that the plan is to do a follow-up economic development plan, which is where you really confirm your vision in that. What we want to do as part of this is a lot of visioning so that we have, where we think you want to go, not where the village, and this is your visioning. And then as we do the comprehensive plan, you'll hear what, where their vision is going, and then maybe you can come back and tweak yours. But I think eventually they're two different, the comp plan has a vision, you have a vision. The hope is certainly that there's
I'm using an extreme example. I don't expect that, but we have a mission, within within OSED for 3 different economic development groups. We have a very clear mission on what we are supposed to be doing here, and so the mission kind of leads the vision. In this case, the village has a mission statement, I'm sure, but it's a much broader, vaguer kind of mission statement. Ours is well defined.
You're in most municipalities that I've worked in don't have that division between the economic development department that's supporting something. That's usually also under the mayor, and they're usually like all
We are
politically
unique.
all politically aligned. So it's a really unusual circumstance. The only other place to hit that is where you've got an IDA that's like part of a county project or something like that. But for a village or municipal level, it's kind of unusual to have that split, and that's something where I think we need to pay close attention to. I think our strategy on that though is to go ahead and try to use the momentum of the visioning that's going on with the comprehensive plan, and just build in a couple more meetings with you and your group to establish a coordinated vision of how does your vision fit with the rest of this, and hopefully you're going to be in line with it. When you're not, we need to think about that. But I think it basically means we need to add 2 meetings.
Because I don't want to make it sound like we don't have a cooperative relationship, because we certainly do. And part of our mission statement, what we do is for the benefit of the village of Fairport and its residents and its businesses. So yeah, I don't think that we're coming from two different places. But it's just a sensitivity that we're gonna have to be aware of. We're a different group here.
It's, I think it's an unusual circumstance, but since you all seem to get along, it's gonna be.
Look at Fairport, right?
Yeah,
We've been very
exactly.
successful and we're
Exactly.
we're a
But,
big part of that.
We're aware of it and, yeah, watching out for that.
It's something to be jealous. I mean, I'm sure a lot of municipalities are jealous of it, that situation, because you've been able to do a lot with having.
There's only two of us in Monroe County, us and, oh, they are Comida again now, right?
Now they are, yes.
They went back to being Comida, didn't they?
They did.
Imagine, yeah, what were they before?
Imagine Monroe.
Imagine,
Yeah, that was-
they are not Comida. Okay.
The rebranding didn't work. Anyway, so what else, should we walk through the other items of the proposal? Or should we
The
jump to
second, the other
things that were-
proposal part, I'm very excited about the build out.
Oh,
Yeah.
I can skip right to that if you'd like. Like, everything else in the proposal was basically what you had brought out in terms of, doing background economic analysis, stakeholder interviews with the business community and the development community. I'm pretty sure that's pretty standard in my process and in what you were asking for. Without it in front of me, I don't remember what some of the other items were. The SWOT analysis. But then one of the things that I've been doing.
That's the stuff that's all in your.
And that's all.
proposal.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yes.
That's all in the
Yes.
proposal. Going beyond that, one of the things that I was recommending, in coordination with the comprehensive plan, that I've worked on in a couple other places recently, doing comprehensive plans. For the last 10 years, I've really been working on doing a lot of GIS, Geographic Information System analysis, of getting down into the real details of tax parcel analysis, not looking at just one, but like looking at groups and how or at districts of how you're breaking it up. It's important in comprehensive planning for a couple of reasons. One is you're making land use recommendations going forward. This is a good time to be able to try to look at the impacts. That what I'm going to do is beyond an impact analysis. It's really going to be the impact analysis is usually a build out analysis that just says, well, what could you possibly build out? What I do is a little more nuanced of integrating market information to say, well, here's what's possible, but here's what the market is likely to produce based on market conditions in this area, given these rules. As we change those rules, what happens? Or if we think about changing those rules, what would happen? Now, we're not going to be changing the rules in the comprehensive plan, but you're setting the framework for updating zoning codes that would follow. So doing that work now of like thinking ahead to what those impacts are really going to be is useful, because it might tell you to either push or pull the policy one way or another, that hold on, you've gone too far, or those changes aren't really going to amount to a hill beans. We need to be a little bit more bolder about it to achieve our objectives. That's a good time to do that. The second thing is that where the comprehensive plan is going to need to go through a secret process, it adds a little bit of that information to like check the box and make everybody feel comfortable with it. I don't think it's something that's going to be really required in this process, but it's something that if there are changes that they like to see, and it's something to make everybody feel better that somebody's looked at what the implications are.
Is our study area defined geographically?
I believe it's the entire village.
The village, just the village. However, and we've had some conversations or emails back and forth about this, about that it's understood that you'll look at what's happening in the periphery as well. For
Sure.
example, the 120 units of housing that's going just north of the
Okay.
village. Or what happens if, Minerva DeLand flips to residential.
Mhm.
Those types of impacts. As part of the comprehensive plan economic development study, that's understood, right? That is part of.
Yeah, so, I mean, we're big on context, right? So there's so many issues in a comp plan and a mixed line of work that don't have municipal boundaries. And certainly one of them is just market demands, transportation, the school districts, there's certain things that just don't have boundaries. And, on the comp plan side, it would be, natural resources and that sort of thing. But from a land use standpoint, that's kind of where we start coming down to the village boundaries, I think. But certainly all the market analysis, all the, anything that we look at from infrastructure transportation is going to be look at kind of what's the national context, what's the regional context, what's the local context, and the local, is going to bleed out into the town, maybe a couple different towns.
Okay. And I guess, I know me, when I think of economic development, I tend to think of it as commercial. And we have a fairly well-defined commercial area. And I just wondered how that fits in as a focal point.
It usually ends up being much more what I look at. I say that and then I pause because in different places, there are different issues. There are some places that most of what they need economic attention on is the housing in neighborhoods. And I have a feeling that in this project, that's going to be fairly light. And that more attention is probably here going to be paid on your main street in your commercial areas. It's just my guess about it, but it's in the scope to look at whatever you prefer me to focus on. We'll dive in.
Because the housing has come up quite a bit. There's the pressure on housing and availability across the whole spectrum and so forth. It won't be ignored as part of the study,
but it wouldn't be through the IDA. Our involvement generally has typically been involved through our urban renewal agency for the housing component, which is not, it's not part of the study, right?
Right.
So,
does the urban renewal agency have boundaries?
the section, urban renewal does, Section 8 housing does not.
Right.
Which is our Section 8 program is part of the urban renewal agency. They're in eastern Monroe County, even in the Wayne County.
One of the things that the housing piece of the comprehensive plan, this is exactly why they need to be done at the same time and coordinated, is that depending on what the housing decisions are, it really impacts what retail you can support and what your retail future might be, about where and how much housing you're talking about in one location. That's part of why these things really need to be coordinated. But if you did a retail study absent of knowing that you were going to be thinking about locating housing someplace, you'd have very different results.
And our last comprehensive plans have always, touted mixed-use development that we see in the urban areas, and so there is a blending of housing as well.
Yeah. So I mean, the direction that this whole thing goes is towards building a synergistic supportive program between housing and retail and employment, and figuring out what uses are the right mix in this place, and how you need to do the land use planning in accordance to take that where you want to go.
Are there going to be any limitations in doing this year while the bridge is up?
I don't see any.
I don't
We'll
anticipate
change the
any.
information or
There's
data you get.
a lot of historical data is going to
Okay.
be generated.
Prior
We're
to.
going to be using it before the bridge was up. We'll have stakeholder interviews, and we'll hear both sides.
The thing that might
Through
affect
that.
there, it probably means that in the interviews, a lot of people complain about it.
Right. Wow.
We can build 15 more minutes into it.
And what's your timetable? If you want to just, I think with the comprehensive plan is over a 12-month period. And it looks like on your schedule here, the economic development portion, there's going to be an intense 90-day period early on.
Yeah, I think we suggested that it was going to be kind of in the beginning and the end, depending on how you want to approach this a little bit. Is that the analysis side of this, certainly wants to happen up front so that it can inform
a lot of the background research
plan.
I'm going to be pulling like as soon as we begin, and I'll start the number crunching and the interview process. Some of the things I want to sort of hold back before coming to conclusions on is I'd like to hold back until the visioning piece, the community visioning is happening, and as they start coming up with their plans, we'd like to be able to sit in the same room and talk about the economic trends and talk about like the vision that comes out both of this group and the community, and sort of coordinate that into one like organized approach.
Yeah, so we had it as just kind of a 3-month thing, but I think, I don't know if you have any deadlines that as Glenn
No,
says,
nothing, deadlines.
if we can do like probably the bulk of, the legwork, the analysis, the market stuff, but then if we're not in a hurry to wrap this up, then maybe some of the, the findings are stronger if it's done, as we start hearing more feedback.
Some of the things that need to be coordinated at the end, if we do the GIS impact study, that needs to be coordinated with the preliminary recommendations so that we can like show the impact of that.
So that's a front end kind of.
So that ends up being a back end
Okay.
kind of thing that that I'm ready to plug the new information in, and as soon as they have made like thoughtful choices about it, we have a conversation about what that means, and it's coordinated. And there's an iteration at the end. But on my for my schedule, it goes fast. I'll have it. We're talking about it. I can get that done in a matter of days. So it's not going to hold the process up, but it's just where it needs to fall in the process.
Has this team worked together already on other?
I've worked with Highland Planning quite a bit.
Okay.
So I know that works smoothly. We've worked on Landmark together,
Yeah.
but as professional
There's
firms,
individuals,
Mhm.
board,
Oh, okay.
both
Mhm.
on the board of the
boards.
Landmark Society.
But I don't think we've actually worked together as firms. So this will be the first partnership.
So are you a consultant to Highland or to SWBR?
In this case, I'm a consultant to SWBR.
And when Glenn mentioned GEIS or the environmental impact statement, we're assuming that's on the town comprehensive plan side. You guys aren't going to be adopting anything, and that there won't be any secret requirements as part of your process, correct?
The ED study?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
No?
For a study? No.
For your study, it's not required. It's something that
So it's just whether we use some of the information and data from your study to help support
to support the
comprehensive plan secret process,
because as long as you're doing the analysis.
So what we're going to be looking at is, again, are we going to enter into an agreement with SWBR? And then also if we want to add on services. And tell me again, what are the numbers for the
20 is the base, and then the visioning is 1,000, and it's 1,000 for the impact analysis, and we have budgeted
And
25,000.
that stays within your budget.
Was it 5,000?
The impact is 5.
What did I say? I'm sorry. No, visioning was 1,000, impact was 5. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry.
Oh, so we're over budget.
By $1,000, but it's well spent. I recommend it. I think that would be money well spent.
I thought the fee was,
I have like 20,000 on what you sent in the minutes and then 22.
well, and it's interesting.
Oh,
If you go to the
I
proposal,
apologize. The paper copy was an error.
the written word was 20,000, the numeric was 22.
That's right. But I clarified with Don that it was 20.
Honoring the lower
Okay.
number there.
Yes, thank you.
So the 20.
Yes.
Yeah.
Apologies. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I caught that the first day.
Yeah.
And the actual contract between the Industrial Development Agency and the consultant is generated by us, or is it going to be their
Generally,
contract?
They usually provide a contract for us to review.
Okay. Any more questions of these guys?
When are you starting your process with the village on the comp plan? Do you have a contract yet? I know it went through the board and was awarded, but you're not in contract
Approval.
yet.
I don't think it's been signed yet.
So
I
if,
think the board authorized them to sign it.
all right, so so now we're at the
Trying
end
to
of
get the right
February,
format, 'cause they had a-
and so maybe you go to contract middle of March,
Yeah,
and then you start work April
I
1?
would think that
Or,
we
I don't
could
know.
start in March. I would anticipate us starting in March.
Okay,
You know, more public part of the process in April.
oh, okay.
So,
So I don't know if we wanna do a motion tonight, or do we wanna?
Yeah,
is there
so
other
I would prefer that
information?
we
Okay.
get the contract process started. Prefer if we do that, right?
Yeah.
Assuming the board agrees on what we want to do.
Good.
Okay.
you want us to leave the room?
So,
I mean,
oh, you can stay and hear our vote if you want.
Yeah.
I think that's why I was getting the books from Martha. Do I have a motion to accept the base contract of $20,000 and additional add-on services in the amount of
6.
additional $6,000 for a total contract amount of $26,000 for the economic development study as proposed?
So moved.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Any further discussion or comments? Or-
My understanding is that it's a fixed fee contract, correct? Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
We're looking forward to it.
Yes,
It'll be
I'm
fun.
excited.
Thank
Thank you
for
very
coming
much.
in.
That's it.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, we
very good.
will, thanks.
And the one that gets ready.
Yes. Good contract.
Fine, okay.
Thanks. Thank you.
Take care.
All right. So got that one.
Thank you.
Next item of new business is the New York State Economic Development Council annual meeting.
Right, I just wanted to bring this to your attention again. You've seen it a couple times in your emails. This is the annual conference that we attend down in Cooperstown. Since this went out, I've learned that the Otissaga is sold out, the Cooper Inn is sold out. That
Holy cow.
last year they had 280 participants, which was a record high, and I think they're meeting that earlier this year. So I did want to pass it around one more time, but I'm registered to attend. Ed usually attends as well.
I'm registered, yeah.
So, if you wanted to stay at the Holiday Inn, you could come down too. But, just want to pass it around once again for your perusal. And if anyone wants to attend, let us know. We'll make those arrangements for you.
What else for new business for IDA?
Nothing for the idea.
Does anybody else have anything? Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
6:40 or 5:44.